let's move on into this. There's a lot of craziness going on right now with the ACC and Florida State looking to get out. I watched your video you had around like the grant of rights and how there's potential ways for Florida State to get out of this TV deal and be able to move around. So talk us through that. Do you really feel like Florida State's going to be able to get out of this with, I guess, Clemson's? It feels like all the big schools want out because the small schools are definitely not carrying their weight like they're supposed to. But do you see that this actually goes down? Do you think that that Bill of Rights is a possibility you all can, or the grant of rights, apologies, you guys can find a way to get out of this horrendous TV deal?
Yeah, so there was a deadline that was just passed, a day and a week ago, if this comes out on Wednesday, on August 15th, and Florida State needed to announce their intentions of leaving the ACC if they wanted to play in a new conference in 2024. And I wouldn't say adamant, but I was pretty sure that they were not going to do that it was probably more like they'll play 2023 and 2024, and they'll be in a new conference in 2025 would be my best guess. Now, could anything have happened? Could a big offer come in from the Big Ten or something like that? Absolutely. I think 2025 makes more sense for a myriad of reasons. We always tried to point toward that date when we were talking about stuff with obviously the, hey, it's possible that we get out. But yeah, I do think Florida State gets out. I think that, there have been things rumored, and so you have to kind of like check where you're hearing stuff from, this, that, and the other. But it is a major focus. The folks that I've chatted with at Florida State that cover Florida State, just really from all aspects. I've spoken with folks at Clemson who have said like, hey, yeah, they're working on it. They're looking to get out. They're doing anything and everything that they can. I thought Florida State's Board of Trustees meeting, which made national news and everybody was kind of like logged into and tuned into. It was certainly the most, I spoke with somebody there, most, virtually attended Board of Trustees meeting probably in the history of college or, anywhere. But yeah, I think that they will. I would put it at like, I don't know, something really high, 95% that Florida State is playing in a new conference in 2025. And that's not, nobody's told me that. I haven't spoken with somebody at FSU that said like it's done deal or anything like that. My money's on them being able to get out by, I think 2025 they'll be in. If you had to ask me right now, same thing as Oklahoma. I think they'll be in the SEC.
Wow. Okay. My next question was, which conference do you think was going to be able to lure them in?
The next question.
So right there, we're thinking SEC potentially for Florida State. And I'm guessing you got to bring Clemson with them because it only makes sense if the conference is going to break up. You got to bring the two biggest programs from the conference into the SEC and just make SEC basically the powerhouse of college football. At that point, because I saw that, what was it? There was not enough quorum when it comes to voting in, bringing in Cal and Stanford potentially. Talk to me. What was the pushback on bringing in those schools into the ACC, especially from the Florida State side, if you have any insight?
Yeah, I think with Florida State, you mentioned the grant of rights earlier, and that's anywhere from a $300 to $500 million, kind of price tag or weight that it carries with it. But if the ACC goes away and the ACC dissolves, then who do you need to pay that to, right? Who do you owe that money to? If you I don't know, if you owed a credit card and then that company went out of business, you no longer owe that credit card debt. I mean, I'm not telling you to run up credit cards hoping that Capital One goes out of business or anything. But yeah, so in theory, if the if the ACC dissolves, the grant of rights is going to go with it. And so I think from the Florida State perspective, I don't necessarily, we've done some content around 8 teams possibly getting together and dissolving this conference, relatively quickly. I don't know that that's necessarily a thing, but if you look at what happened to the Pac-12 lost 2 of their more valuable brands and they didn't add any teams and eventually they dissolved, right? Like, I mean, we're seeing them dissolve now, right? Colorado left, all the other teams left. They're Pac-4 right now. They're trying to hold on to anything they can or maybe realign with some stuff. But the ACC does at least have enough foresight to see like, hey, Florida State and Clemson are leaving. We got to add more teams to this thing. Because if Florida State and Clemson leave, let's say before next year's August 15th deadline, and that might not actually be the day, but whatever the deadline is in August next year, if Florida State is to leave then, and then let's say North Carolina State and Miami and one other team leave the year after that, you're like 2 teams away from dissolve. Like this thing's like about to burst open. So I think the ACC wants to add as many teams as they can right now to kind of have some kind of a safety net. Now, is the ACC even a Power 5 school at that point anymore? Probably not. Like it's a group of 5 type thing. But that's better than not existing. And so I think if you're Florida State, you want it closer to potentially dissolving down the road. You also are fighting with the ACC and ESPN right now to try and get out of the ACC. And so you're not going to do them any favors, right? Like whether that's petty or spiteful or whatever, like if you're fighting with somebody, you're not going to just automatically try and help them out in any way possible. So I think if you're Florida State, if you're Clemson, you're trying to do a couple of things to kind of CYA, right? Like protect yourself to, whether that be for the short term, long term, whatever. So yeah, I think that's why Florida State, Clemson, UNC, NC State are pretty against it. I've heard others are not for adding teams either. Other teams that think they have a landing spot, maybe Miami, but those were the 4 teams that were named as not being with it as far as a vote goes.
Yeah, I think the thing that bothered me the most about it is how Notre Dame has a vote and is petitioning for it, but they refuse to join the conference. Like, why don't you just go ahead and just be part of the conference, make it a lot simpler for everybody else, and, really put your weight around? Because, and I get it, they like keeping their independence and keeping their own TV deal because, granted, their TV deal is amazing. Is there anything that the ACC could do to even keep Florida State and Clemson and them around? Would it need to find a way to change the way the payout is, or is there anything out there that could actually convince them to keep them around?
I think it'd be tough. What Florida State's been asking for is unequal revenue sharing and in the way of media views. They don't want unequal revenue sharing based on, we make the conference championship so we get a little bit more money, or we make the playoff, we get more money. They just want it based on the media deal. And Florida State has kind of said like, okay, well, if we do that, we could be competitive because we'll at least be in the same ballpark as some of our competition and, what some of the SEC and Big Ten schools are making. But the ACC has pretty much said like, hey, there's no chance. We're not doing that. And so if the ACC was to do that, maybe. But then I think they're going to want Florida State to sign like an even longer grant of rights. Like they're not just going to do that. If they were to give the unequal revenue sharing, they're going to say like, okay, well, now you're locked until 2045. I don't think at that point Florida State would say like, see you, dog. Like we're not doing this. So yeah, very little chance. I think that, the ACC just didn't have any weight to be able to throw around, but like if they could have gotten Notre Dame to join like a year ago, or if they could have maybe gone after some other teams, I don't really know who holds enough weight to really matter, but people talk about West Virginia or maybe Oklahoma State, something that's kind of like regional with where they're at. Maybe add those 2 teams and a Notre Dame, and then you've got an 18-team conference that's pretty legit, like something like that. Then maybe it would work out. But yeah, I think at this point, like there's no real chance of it being held together at all. I think it's pretty much done.
No, that makes sense. You would think the ACC would find a way to keep their, cash cows happy and keep them around. Hell, the Big 12 did that for Texas and allowed them to have the Longhorn Network in order to keep them around specifically because of that. And then, after a while, they decided, now you're not doing enough to actually get past 10 teams. You're still stuck here. We're going to leave. And now the Big 12's got like 18 teams. So they've decided, They figured it out. Like they got desperate and then realized, we need to do something to fix this. And now luckily they'll be one of the 3 big dogs left once we really see big conference realignment. And so it's going to be an interesting piece going forward, but I don't know. I think regional wise, when it comes to college football, we're done. We're losing the regionalization of it. It's just going to be completely national. At some point, the NCAA is going to be gone as the governing body because they're too incompetent to figure out how to make sure things work out properly for everybody. So, yeah. Well, we got my guy TJ here from Double Fries No Slaw, Florida State YouTube channel. Go check him out. Always great content.